My name is Rachel Turner. I am 29 years old. I remember standing on that stage, in my cap and gown, scanning the crowd for my parents' faces. They weren't there. I found out later, through a text from my aunt, that they'd chosen my sister Melissa's baby shower instead. Same day. Same time. We figured you'd understand, my mother said, when she called that evening. Melissa's baby shower only happens once. Your graduation, well, there'll be other ceremonies in life. I stood in my empty apartment, still in my cap and gown, and said, "Sure, Mom. I understand." I didn't understand. Not really. But I said it anyway. That sentence, "there'll be other ceremonies in life," stayed with me for 6 years. Let me back up. I grew up in a house where my younger sister Melissa was the sun, and I orbited somewhere at a polite distance. Melissa got the birthday parties with the bounce houses. I got a cake and a card, usually a day late because my parents forgot. Melissa struggled in school, and my parents hired tutors, celebrated every small improvement like a miracle. I brought home straight A's, and my report card sat on the counter, unmentioned, next to the grocery list. Melissa married young, to a man named Tyler who had a good job and an easy smile. My parents adored him instantly. They planned the wedding for 8 months, cried through the vows, danced until midnight. I finished my accounting degree that same year, working 2 jobs to pay for it myself. Nobody planned anything for me. Nobody cried happy tears over my diploma. When Melissa got pregnant, 3 years later, my parents transformed. My mother quit her part-time job early to help decorate the nursery. My father started a grandbaby fund, depositing money every month, proudly telling anyone who would listen. I got my CPA license that same year. I mentioned it once at Sunday dinner. "That's wonderful, sweetie," my mother said, already turning back to ask Melissa about nursery colors. I stopped mentioning things after that. Then came the day of my graduate school graduation, my master's degree, the one I'd worked toward for 2 years while still working full-time. The same day as Melissa's baby shower. They chose the baby shower. Without much discussion. Without much guilt either. I sat through my own graduation ceremony, watching other families cheer for their kids, while mine cheered somewhere else entirely. That night, I made a quiet decision. I would stop expecting them to show up. I would stop measuring my life by whether they noticed it. Over the next several years, I built my own path. I got a job at a respected accounting firm. I earned promotions. I started managing high-value client portfolios. None of it made it into family conversation. Melissa's daughter's first steps did. Melissa's second pregnancy did. My promotions did not. I didn't resent Melissa. She hadn't asked for the favoritism. But I did, slowly and quietly, start pulling back from a family that only seemed to notice me when they needed something. By the time I was 28, I was earning well, living independently, and mostly attending family events out of obligation rather than desire. I had no idea, at the time, that a financial storm was quietly building behind my parents' front door, one that would eventually require something only I could provide. The trouble started with my father's small hardware store, the one he'd run for 25 years. A large chain opened 2 miles away. Business slowed. Then it slowed more. He took out a second mortgage on the family house to keep the store afloat. My mother didn't tell me this, I found out from Melissa, almost by accident, during a phone call about something else entirely. Dad stressed about the store, she mentioned. They had to borrow against the house. I didn't ask for details. It wasn't really my business, I told myself. I hadn't been included in family financial matters for years. Why would this be different? The store closed 18 months later. Quietly, without any announcement beyond a small sign in the window. My father, a proud man, didn't mention it at family dinners. He simply stopped going to the store, and started saying he was taking some time off. The second mortgage payments continued, now without the income that had justified them. I found out how bad things had gotten almost 2 years later, during a tense phone call from my mother. "Rachel," she said, her voice tighter than usual. "We need to talk to you about something. It's about the house." They were behind on payments. significantly behind. The bank was threatening foreclosure. My parents needed a cosigner on a refinance to save the house, someone with strong enough credit and income to qualify. Melissa and Tyler, with a mortgage and 2 kids of their own, didn't qualify. My father's credit was too damaged from the missed payments. My mother had never worked full-time, so she had no income history to speak of. That left me. We wouldn't ask, my mother said, but we don't have anyone else. I sat with that sentence for a long moment. We don't have anyone else. Not, we thought of you first. Not, we know how capable you are. Just, no one else was available. I asked for a few days to think about it. During those few days, old memories surfaced, one after another. The empty seats at my graduation. The unmentioned report cards. The birthday cakes a day late. The years of, "That's wonderful, sweetie," followed immediately by a return to Melissa's life. I thought about signing anyway, because it was still my parents, still the house I grew up in, still family, whatever that word meant to them. I also thought about what it would mean to finally say no. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-respect. I decided, quietly, that I would help, but on my own terms. Not simply as a fallback option, chosen because there was no one else. If I was going to save this house, it would be because I chose to, not because I was their last resort. I called my mother back and told her I needed to meet with them directly, in person, to discuss the details. We met at their kitchen table, the same table where family dinners had happened for 30 years, the same table where I'd once sat quietly while everyone discussed Melissa's baby shower plans. My father looked older than I remembered. Tired. Diminished, somehow, by the weight of the store's closure. "So," I said, laying out the loan documents I'd already reviewed with a lawyer friend. "I've looked into what it would take to co-sign this refinance." My mother's face lit up with relief. "So you'll do it?" "I have some conditions," I said. The room went quiet. "First," I said, "I want to be listed as a co-owner on the deed, not just a co-signer on the loan. If I'm taking on this financial risk, I want equity, not just liability." My father frowned. "This is still our house, Rachel. We just need help with the loan." "I understand that," I said. "But I'm not doing this as a favor with no protection for myself. If something happens, if payments are missed again, I need to have some say, some stake, in what happens to this house." My mother started to protest, but I continued. "Second," I said, "I want a written agreement about who handles the finances going forward. I'll review the household budget every quarter. Not to control your lives, but because I'm not doing this blindly again." "You don't trust us," my father said quietly. "I love you," I said. "But no, I don't blindly trust the financial decisions that got us here. And I think, if you're honest, you'd admit those are 2 different things." Silence stretched across the table. "Third," I said, my voice steady but firm, "I want an honest conversation, right now, about why it took a financial crisis for either of you to treat me like someone worth including." I sat through my graduation alone. I built my entire career without a single conversation about it at this table. And now, the first time you truly need something from me, I'm the answer. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Rachel, we didn't mean." "I know you didn't mean to hurt me," I said. "But you did. For years. And I need you to understand that before I sign anything." My father looked down at his hands, saying nothing for a long moment. "You're right," he finally said. "We took you for granted. We assumed you'd always be fine, always be capable, so we never worried about you the way we worried about Melissa." "That's exactly it," I said. "You worried about the one who needed worrying about. And I became invisible because I didn't." Nobody had an answer for that. We sat at that table for another hour, working through the terms. My father, humbled by the store's closure and the reality of nearly losing the house, agreed to everything without much further argument. My mother cried through most of it, not performative tears, but something quieter and more honest than I'd seen from her in years. "I always thought you were the strong one," she said at one point. The one who didn't need as much from us. I didn't realize that was something we did to you, not something you just were. I didn't have a perfect response to that. I simply nodded and said, I know now. That's what matters. The refinance closed 6 weeks later. My name went on the deed, alongside my parents'. A written agreement outlined quarterly budget reviews, shared decision-making, and clear expectations going forward. Melissa, when she found out, called me, surprised. I didn't know things were that bad, she said. I didn't know you'd been carrying all of this. I wasn't carrying anything, I said. I was excluded from carrying anything, until it became convenient to include me. She was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Rachel. I didn't see it before. It's not your fault, I said. And I meant it. Melissa hadn't asked for the favoritism any more than I'd asked to be overlooked. Over the following months, something in the family dynamic genuinely shifted. My mother started calling just to talk, not just to update me on Melissa's kids. My father began asking real questions about my career, my opinions on financial matters, my life outside of being the responsible one. It wasn't a perfect transformation. Old habits resurfaced occasionally, a comment here, an oversight there. But the foundation had changed. I was no longer invisible until needed. I was included, consistently, because they had finally seen what it cost to leave me out. A year after the refinance, we held a small family dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and conversation around that same kitchen table. My father raised his glass, unprompted, and said, to Rachel, who saved this house, and who taught this family what it actually means to show up for someone. It wasn't the grand toast Melissa had received at her wedding. It wasn't an entire party planned in my honor. But it was real, and it was seen, and after 6 years, that was enough. Here is what I want you to take from this. If you've ever been the overlooked one in your family, the reliable one, the strong one, the one nobody worried about because you never seemed to need worrying about. Being capable does not mean you don't need to be seen. Being independent does not mean you don't deserve to be included, celebrated, or shown up for. You are allowed to set conditions before you give your help. You are allowed to ask for equity, not just responsibility. You are allowed to require honesty before you extend generosity. Family isn't just about who shows up when they need you. It's about who shows up when you need them, too, and if that balance is broken, you have every right to correct it, calmly, firmly, on your own terms. You do not have to earn your place at the table by being endlessly convenient. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for your family, is to finally say, not without conditions. Not without being seen.